Recently, a Korean elementary school teacher was found to have acted in a way that lacks gender sensitivity by instilling gender stereotypes into students and saying inappropriate things. One teacher gave a female student underwear laundry homework and said, "Princess, pink underwear is pretty." That's not a personal problem or an individual case. In a survey of a total of 4,217 primary and secondary school students, the Korean Women's Policy Institute said about 14% have witnessed sexist remarks or actions in school over the past year. These words and actions can instill a false gender stereotype, especially in young students. So, what are the effects of teachers' gender role beliefs on girls' and boys' beliefs and achievement outcomes? Today we'd like to talk about gender stereotypes in the classroom and effects on achievement by Sule Alan, Seda Ertac, and Ipek Mumchu, published in the Review of Economics and Statistics, Volume 100. In the first step, I'm going to explain the method of the research paper by going into detail about the background. The authors of the paper study the effect of elementary school teachers' beliefs about gender roles on student achievement. Therefore, they exploit a natural experiment where teachers are prevented from self-selecting into schools and conditional on school students are allocated to teachers randomly. State elementary students are allocated to their teachers in first grade randomly, and teachers are appointed to school centrally by the Ministry of Education based on a need for teachers, and as such they are prevented from self-selecting into catchment areas and schools before acquiring a considerable number of years of service. Last but not least, students have the same teacher for the entire elementary school period, which corresponds to 4 years. Let's have a closer look at the data set. Data were collected using a rich battery of tools, which includes surveys, a fluid IQ test, and official grade records, as well as objective mathematics and verbal tests. The students selected for this natural experiment are 3rd and 4th grade students in public elementary schools in particularly needy areas of Istanbul. They observe 31 schools, about 4,000 students, and 145 teachers. The dataset is divided into 3 parts: student and family characteristics, teacher characteristics, and measuring gender role beliefs. To account for the role of student and family characteristics in determining academic achievement, they collected rich measures of behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs, as well as demographic information about the home environment, socioeconomic status, and family background. Also, standardized math and verbal tests were implemented in each classroom. Here you can see the main variables, which are student gender, age, the Raven IQ score, self-reported confidence, gender role beliefs, growth mindset, teacher-reported behavior score, student-reported gender roles at home, mother's employment status, and teacher-reported socioeconomic status categories. Let's move on with teacher characteristics. In addition to their education and study majors, the study provides a set of variables that relate to the teaching style and pedagogical approach of the teachers. Besides the variables gender, tenure, education, experience, branch of study, and teacher effort, there are 4 distinct teaching style variables. These are modern versus traditional, growth versus fixed mindset, warm versus distanced, and extrinsic versus intrinsic motivator. They also collected information on teachers' extracurricular activities that focus on teaching improvement and student achievement through the survey. The gender role beliefs of both students and teachers are measured using the same questionnaire. It shows that male students and male teachers have more traditional views, and teachers with a plain education are more likely to hold traditional beliefs about gender roles. Among the teaching style constructs, growth mindset and warmth are the best predictors of teachers' gender role beliefs, as you can see here. However, the number of volunteer activities is the only effort measure that is significant. In the next step, we're going to take a look at the results of the effects of teachers' gender role beliefs on student test scores. The exposure variable is divided into 3 groups, which are 1-year exposure, 2 to 3-year exposure, and 4-year exposure. So this raises the question whether the length of the exposure to the same teacher have any effects on girls' and boys' performance in objective math and verbal tests. Teachers' gender role beliefs affect math and verbal scores only for girls, especially when taught by the same teacher for 4 years. Thus, traditional gender role beliefs on the part of the teacher have a harmful effect on girls' performance in both mathematics and verbal tests. Boys' math scores are significantly positively affected by long-term exposure to the same teacher of the teacher's gender role beliefs. The following tables depict the negative functional relationship between the teacher's beliefs and girls' and boys' math test scores. On the x-axis we find teachers' gender stereotyping score, and on the y-axis we can see the standardized verbal test scores. The upper table shows the results of a 1-year exposure, and the lower tables show the results of a 4-year exposure. Looking at 4-year exposure results, one can see the decreasing and fairly linear relationship between the gender stereotypes of teachers and girls' math test positive scores. For boys, on the other hand, we observe a rather nonlinear relationship, but at the very extreme, boys' math scores are higher under extremely progressive teachers, as you can see here. This relationship breaks down as the teacher becomes more conservative. It appears that, except for the case of an extremely progressive teacher, boys may even benefit from a teacher's traditional gender role beliefs. You can see that there is a slight relationship if we don't consider the extremes. For 1-year exposure, the relationship is pretty weak for both boys and girls, with again some evidence of both genders benefiting from a very progressive teacher. You can see that here. The following tables show the relationship between teachers' gender stereotyping and verbal test scores for both boys and girls. The x and y axis remain the same, only for verbal test scores instead of math test scores. Here we can see the negative functional relationship between the teacher's beliefs and girls' verbal test scores. Again, with the exception of the most progressive teachers, at the corner the relationship is flat for boys. Overall, the results show a significantly gender differential effect of the teacher's gender role beliefs on student achievement. We estimate a declining and fairly linear relationship for girls under a 4-year exposure to the same teacher, while no obvious or no statistically significant pattern of relationship emerges for boys. In the next step, we take a closer look at the robustness check. With the robustness check, the researcher examines how certain core regression coefficient estimates behave when the regression specification is modified by adding or removing regressors. The persons you can see here, they represent a sample of teachers in the experiment. With the first robustness check, it is excluded that some omitted aspects of teacher quality are proxied well with extreme progressiveness by excluding very progressive teachers whose gender stereotype score is lower than the 10th percentile. The results for girls, especially for math scores, remain very strong, although there was a small loss of precision for verbal results. In a second robustness check, it is excluded that teachers are self-selecting into schools by excluding teachers who have more than 20 years of service in the teaching profession. The results also remain very similar to the full sample results. With the third robustness check, it is excluded that teachers' beliefs may reflect what he or she observes in the class by asking them whether he or she has observed boys or girls to be better at math or equal in their experience as a teacher. Here, no effect can be observed. In order to establish whether and how large a part of the effect on test scores is coming through potential mediators, a mediation analysis is implemented. This is divided into two effects, the average causal mediation effect and the average direct effect. The three potential mediators are gender role beliefs, self-confidence, and growth mindset. We estimate no effect on self-confidence and mindset for either boys or girls. But we estimate that a traditional teacher increases girls' gender stereotype beliefs by about 0.2 standard deviations. Overall, we estimate that a traditional teacher lowers girls' math scores by about 0.16 standard deviations, and about 17% of that comes from girls' gender role beliefs being affected by their teachers' gender role beliefs. Let's go back to our main question, which is, what are the effects of teachers' gender role beliefs on girls' and boys' beliefs and achievement outcomes? The study shows that girls are taught for longer than a year by teachers with traditional gender views have lower performance in objective math and verbal tests, and this effect is amplified with longer exposure to the same teacher. No effect was found on boys. The mediation analyses showed that the effect is partly mediated by teachers transmitting traditional beliefs to girls. So, what is the implication for the educational policy? In the future, it is important to achieve gender equality in teaching practices and attitudes early on, for example, by training teachers to raise awareness of such biases and their effects. This could help prevent inefficient gender gaps in achievement, occupational selection, and labor market outcomes. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now.